Las Vegas is the driest metropolitan area in the United States. We receive typically less than 4 inches of rainfall a year. We actually had a really good year last year. Prior to that, in 2021, it was like less than 2. So it is a very dry community. We cannot rely on rainfall to keep things alive. Unlike other kind of more humid areas of the Western United States that can. What's a little bit different about Las Vegas too is that we are nearly fully dependent on our Colorado River resources. So 90% of our demands are met by Colorado River resources, 10% are met by local groundwater supplies. The Las Vegas Valley Water District and North Las Vegas have water rights, so we, by we, I mean wearing my water district hat, we can pump those groundwater rights and meet municipal demands. There are not enough groundwater rights. It's not a sustainable resource to meet the long-term demands of the community, right? So if the Colorado River went away, the groundwater supply will not be able to meet this community. That's always kind of a question that we get. We pump those water rights to usually meet peak demands in the summer, and then we use it kind of as a flexible resource. And if you haven't been to Lake Mead, I suggest you go. But it looks different, right? It looks a lot different than when I went to Lake Mead growing up. It's declined about 150 feet since the early 2000s. So if you were here in '99, we actually were opening the spillways because it was a period of high flows. That water was so abundant in Lake Mead, we had to reduce water for flooding reasons, so that we weren't flooding upstream. By 2004, it had already dropped to looks about maybe 40 feet, and then in 2023, we're down 150. So significant declines, and that is from ongoing drought. The good news, and you'll be seeing this in the papers, we had a really great year for inflows. So our water in Lake Mead and water in Lake Powell comes from snowpack in the Colorado Rockies. So when it's great ski season, we see a lot of that, especially a great long ski season, translates to a lot of water in Lake Mead. Now with that said, this was a great year. So we had about 160% of average. So if 100% average, we had significantly more than average. However, you can see, and Lake Mead will increase as a result of that. However, like, the drought's not over. No one is throwing parties at the office, right? We've had years where we had really solid years, but then if you look at 2011, where we had about 150%, it was followed by 2 years of the worst 2 years of inflow on record, right? So in order for Lake Mead to recover, we need years like this back to back for about 10 years. So we are not seeing that. We are seeing one good year followed by usually 2 or 3 red bars. And so as we continue to kind of run at a deficit, when the river runs at a deficit, that's why Lake Mead's water elevations are falling. So we had a good snowfall, but our lower basin is going to continue to remain in shortage. So what that means is the federal government looks at Lake Mead's water elevations, projects what they're going to be, and then based on what those elevations are, it can trigger shortage. And I don't have that slide in here, but it just means that we cannot use our full allocation that we are federally entitled to. Also, it means that Arizona cannot either, and California. So we're kind of all in this together, sharing a shortage. And knowing that where we are and where we've come from, which is 20 years of drought on the Colorado River, the federal government and the basin states agree that it is likely not a period of drought. It is probably a longer period of aridification, where climate change, where things are gonna get hotter and drier in the basin, and what we're seeing might just be the new normal. So Southern Nevada for sure is making sure that we can live in this new normal as the smallest federally allocated user on the river. So we have the smallest percentage of rights to Colorado River. We have rights to less than 2%. And so we have to do more with less. And all the states really have to do more with less. This is my shortest slide. So right now, so just kind of by way of background, we have rights to 300,000 acre feet in the Colorado River. Just by context, an acre foot is an acre of land filled with 1 foot of water. It came from an agriculture. that measurement. So we have rights to 300,000 acre feet. As the elevations decline in Lake Mead, what we can pull out of Lake Mead is reduced. So right now, we can only pull out 275,000 acre feet of water in Lake Mead. The good news is thanks to conservation, we're not feeling that pain yet. We're not feeling that squeeze because we have reduced our water use so much. Kind of by way of background, when we were all fat and happy in 1999 and the water was like, Lake Mead was so full and it was so awesome, we were actually using beyond our allocation. At the time it was okay because we were experiencing flooding within the river system. A lot of the states were encouraged to use more water. So we were using 325,000 acre feet. When we were starting to see those initial, like 2002 was I think the worst year of inflows on the Colorado River, we got really serious about conservation and we got really serious fast because we could not exceed our allocation. And so you see what you're looking at is our water use going down since in the last 2 decades, and that's all thanks to conservation, and that's all thanks to kind of using our water more efficiently. So right now, our shortages are mitigated thanks to conservation. Another reason why we focus so much on conservation and why we focus so much on consumptive use conservation is how we use water. So Southern Nevada, a lot of people don't know this, we probably have one of the largest water recycling programs in the United States. Anything that hits a drain in Southern Nevada is returned to a wastewater treatment facility where it is highly treated, discharged into the Las Vegas Wash and returns to Lake Mead. So it just generates a giant loop. So that is why myself, my colleagues, we will never be in front of a group and tell everyone to turn off the water when they're brushing their teeth, right? Like, it's helpful, it saves power, it saves money on your water bill, but it doesn't necessarily save a water resource because we're gonna capture it on the back end. Where we do lose water is things like outdoor irrigation, septic tanks, and evaporative cooling. So those represent the 3 largest ways Southern Nevada consumes water, which is, it is a one-time use. Once it goes into an evaporative cooling system, once it goes onto a lawn, once it goes into a septic tank, Lake Mead can't see it again. So every gallon of water that we return to Lake Mead, we can take it out. So what actually ends up happening, I mentioned we had rights to 300,000 acre feet. We actually divert about more than 500,000 out of Lake Mead because we're putting so much back in. So these are where we expend our conservation dollars and where we focus our conservation programs. A little bit about the drought and why we're one of the most protected communities in the Western United States because of our infrastructure. So we access water in Lake Mead. Prior to about 2015, we only had these first 2 intakes. However, this first intake is at elevation 1050. So that's 1,050 in Lake Mead. Our water, like Lake Mead's water elevation currently, it was like 1046 about 2 weeks ago. I don't know what it is right now. But it was, this intake was above water, so it was sucking air. We have another intake at elevation 1,000, but kind of when this drought started, our engineers were like, well, what happens if elevations fall below 1,000? We don't have an intake that is large enough to meet this entire community's demands. So in early 2005-ish, they launched a large engineering project to design and construct a 3rd intake. So a lot of people call it a 3rd straw, which is 3 miles underneath Lake Mead and comes up in the deepest part of Lake Mead to access the coldest, cleanest water in Lake Mead. This is large enough to meet all of our community's demands so that in the event that these 2 are indeed sucking air, that we can meet those demands under the worst shortage drought conditions. We also constructed a 3rd pumping station in order to operate this under very low elevations. We needed a 3rd pumping station. So together, those 2 pieces of infrastructure was about $1 billion, but it means, and what's really special about our intake is at 875 feet. We can no longer send water over the spillway at Hoover Dam at 895 feet. So that means California and Arizona would not be able to receive their water from Lake Mead. However, we still have access to ours. So that's a very critical piece of infrastructure for Southern Nevada. And actually, right now, the 3rd intake is what's serving all of our water right now. It just is it's the easiest water to treat. Okay, another advantage that Nevada has managing this drought is our decades-long commitment to conservation. We got really busy really fast because we didn't have enough water. We had to start reducing our water demand on the Colorado River. So that's why we've seen Southern Nevada completely shift how we grow. So that means no grass in front yards. Now it also means no grass in backyards for new development. It means no grass in street medians and in sidewalks and all of those places where you can't use it to recreationally play. We have water waste investigators. We've got tiered water rates, so you're paying more for more water you use. We've got a lot of rebate programs to incentivize anyone, businesses and residential, to become more efficient. And I think that's kind of that. Another thing that kind of makes our community really unique is that the recognition that we're all in this together, right? So Henderson is not unique to North Las Vegas or anything like that, right? So we are all going to adopt and make tough decisions together because for the common good. That a lot of other communities really struggle with that, where there's other communities, you can look at Southern California or Arizona, where those communities, like LA is right next to Malibu, which is right next to, all of these places have kind of different conservation programs and all of those things. But what we have is like a shared common goal, right? So we're all in this together. All of our member agencies are gonna kind of address this together, which is a very nice position to be in for us. And what we've seen is conservation matters, right? So I showed earlier that decline of, let me see if I have that slide, I'll talk about it in a second. What we've seen even just recently, right? So in the last 3 years, we've added 47,000 new connections. So that means 47,000 new homes, new businesses, whatever that looks like. So that's a new meter in the ground serving something new. However, our water use has declined by 12% because of conservation, right? It's not if you grow, it's making sure that every new piece of water that we serve is the most efficient use for this community. And what we're also seeing is that since 2000, when we started implementing these measures, our population has increased by 49%, but our water use per person has decreased by 51%. We have added almost 800,000 new people, and we are using less water than we were 20 years ago, which I don't know of any other community that can tout those kind of stats, but it is really important to underscore conservation.
Yeah, we can give ourselves a round
Yes.
of applause.
So what we're realizing is that, in drought, in order to protect our community, we have to build to what our natural disaster is, right? So if Miami is gonna put in earthquake or hurricane regulations and kind of same for Southern California, San Francisco has tons of earthquake requirements in their building codes, we have to have drought and water scarcity in our building codes, right? We have to manage our water resources, we have to protect our community that's here. So that's why you're gonna see a lot of recent initiatives. Some of them are not popular, I recognize that. I will take a line of complaints afterwards. As to, this community will look different, and it's going to look different, and it looks different than it did 20 years ago. It looks different than it did 40 years ago, because we've just become more efficient. We are building now to what is special about this community, right? We're in a desert. Grass doesn't naturally grow here, right? If you look out into the undeveloped areas, Red Rock's our backyard, you see those beautiful kind of landscapes there, and that's what we need to replicate when we're building. So we have state law that prohibits non-functional grass, so that's that grass in the streetscapes and those kinds of things, and you're gonna see it all around with these signs that everyone's converting right now. We have new septic requirements that the water district will not provide Colorado River water to a property with a septic. Let's see, we have, starting September 1st, all new buildings, that's not true. Starting September 1st, you cannot pull a permit for a new building if it has evaporative cooling. So everything is gonna be moving to dry cooling, so a more AC type of mechanical cooling technology. New swimming pools are limited to 600 square feet of surface area. All new grass is only limited to parks, schools, and cemeteries to make sure it can be used where it's needed. No new golf courses. Golf courses are taking also a haircut in their water budgets. No new fountains anywhere. And then we've got new water pricing. And so in all of those things, we've charted out, we've measured what those water savings will be. Like, we have to meet our new conservation goal of 86 gallons per capita per day. So that means I'm using 86 gallons a day. You know, everyone in this room is using 86. Right now we're around 105. I don't remember what we're around, but you know, we are definitely on our way to get there. Like, when we started this, it was in the 300s. So we can definitely get there, but it's just becoming more efficient. And what I like to end on is this slide, which is, I realize it's very graphy, but what it's showing, and I need to update this because I don't have my labels on here, but what it's showing is, so the Water Authority prepares a 50-year water resource plan every single year. So we project how we're gonna meet demands for the next 50 years. And we do that under a variety of different hydrology scenarios and population scenarios. So if population goes wild, we'll be able to meet demands. If it doesn't, if it stays what it is, if the Colorado River inflows fall off a cliff, how are you gonna meet those demands, right? So we have about 12 to 16 different scenarios based on what year it is. And so this one is probably our worst case scenario. So by way of background, the river is divided and based on its allocation, based on a 15 million acre feet inflow each year. This is assuming we're only getting 11. So that is, you know, a significant reduction in inflows, almost 30%. And so what this big blue area, that's our Colorado River resources. So obviously we'll use that first. This light blue is actually a new project that we're looking at with Southern California. So we're investing about $750 million into, over a long term, not tomorrow. Southern California is making their water use more efficient. So for portions of Southern California, their wastewater is highly treated but then discharged into the ocean, and it's not reused. They are constructing a series of artificial recharge wells that will function like how we use our water. So their indoor water use will go and be highly treated, but instead of return to Lake Mead, because they don't have the convenient access like we do, theirs is going to be discharged into their groundwater aquifer. Their groundwater aquifers are significantly larger than Southern Nevada's, so they are able to mix and be able to pull out another at a later time when their water use is needed. So this represents a very efficient way for Southern Nevada or Southern California to grow. We're investing into a portion of that project, and we will receive a portion of that water resource. So that will not come online until the mid-2030s, but that will represent a significant long-term permanent water resource for Southern Nevada. This green is our temporary water supply. So we have about 8 years of water use banked in all kinds of different areas. So we have water banked in our local groundwater aquifer. We have water banked in Lake Mead. We have water banked in Arizona in their groundwater aquifers, and we have water banked in California in their storage reservoirs. So when we say we need water, we say, hey, Arizona, stop using our, like whatever we have stored there. Stop using, let's say it's 500,000 acre feet. Stop using our 500,000 acre feet. You're gonna rely on the groundwater resources that we've stored there, and we're gonna pull your supply out of Lake Mead. So it's kind of a transfer, how that works. Same with California. So those temporary resources are intended, they're kind of a one-time use. When you use it, it's done. They're not a long-term sustainable supply, but they do represent about 9 years of storage. And that they kind of operate as a bridge to our next permanent resource. So on the left, this is assuming we are meeting our conservation goal. On the right is assuming we are not meeting our conservation goal. And what this is showing is this like scary red piece is like around 2055, we're gonna have to start using another resource that we don't necessarily have construction on or infrastructure for or plans to do. What this will likely be is something like a desalination exchange. But in fairness, this is very expensive. This is gonna be a very expensive endeavor for this community to fund and construct, whatever that looks like. Conservation is free and easier. So I suggest, it's easy for me to say, let's all do this together, but it really is, and this is me also begging, we have to do this together. We have to be in it together as a community to just reduce your water use, play our part, and like thank you to so many who are already doing that, who are taking out their non-functional turf, who are kind of changing behaviors in their own home. It's awesome, like fixing leaks, the easiest way to save water. And that's what we've got. So I'm happy to answer so many questions.
Great.
Okay, I was like, oh good, I'm out of here. Yes.
So on this AB 220 that's coming out, what time frame are you seeing on when homes are going to come off with septic tanks in a mandatory fashion?
So Assembly Bill 220 has been completely amended. So Assembly Bill 220 initially was drafted as a mandatory conversion for septic tanks to get onto municipal sewer. However, it's been significantly amended, and that amendment was introduced and accepted last night. So now the bill does not require any kind of mandatory septic conversion. The only septic mention that the bill does have is it sets up a voluntary program for anyone who is interested in voluntarily converting. We do have lots of people on that voluntary interest list to get off of their septic. And it also funds any conversions for voluntary conversions at 100%. So
Wait, who's paying? What was that last part again?
it's a
It's
voluntary
a
conversion.
voluntary conversion, but what did you say then with it?
And it's 100% funded, but limited to what's available, which will be established by a fund that the health district could set up. So if the health district chooses to enact a fee for all septic users, they could enact an annual fee that is no more than the largest wastewater sewer, largest waste. So in Southern Nevada, it would be the Clark County Water Reclamation District, which has is the largest sewer, and I think their annual bill is about $250. So the annual septic fee would be no more than that. But that's if the health district enacts it, and that's what would fund it. But if there's no funding available, then the program would not be available for customers.
Because when I was calling about this the last 3 and 4 weeks ago, there's no money there. And the talk of converting that and connecting to nearby sewer, those exceed $80,000 per household.
Yep.
And it has affected homes. I had one, I couldn't figure out where the equity went. 75,000 was missing from sales from the end of June to the middle of March. And the only piece that fit was it was on public water and septic. So there's a fear factor with that. There's no money for funding. It's all on the homeowner.
Well, and now the requirement is removed. So it's
That's why one of the reasons.
Right. So it was one of, it was the legislature heard from their constituents and they removed that requirement. So if someone wants to convert and there's funding available, they can, but if not, they don't have to.
How do they get on that list?
You contact me. I'll leave my card. That's all you need to do. I just need either a parcel number or an address and a name and contact information, so how I can get a hold of you. There will be, it is expensive to convert. We have some grant funding. We have about $5 million in grant funding right now. There will be a little bit of priority. So those customers who have sewer right in front of them, those costs are lower. Customers who might be affected by nitrate in the groundwater supply that's nearby. So there is a little bit of priority that we're gonna look at, but we haven't set up a formal program or worked with the health district to establish that because we've been waiting to see what AB 220 does. So now that it's voluntary, but at 100%, we just can't accommodate everyone who's on the list already.
Couple more questions.
Oh, me.
Yes.
All right. So 2 things. One, what are the projections on savings with the pool size? And is that 600? Is that just a teaser size, or are they going to make it smaller later?
So I will have to get you the pool savings later because I don't know that off the top of my head, and I'm not gonna give you a wrong number. But if you want to take a card, I will send that to you because we have it in a presentation that we gave to the board. It's not a teaser. That's what it is. It's gonna be 600 square feet. How that number was determined was, we know that the average pool size in Southern Nevada, average square footage is 475 square feet. So 600 actually represents 80% of most pools fall under that 600 square feet. We were really trying to capture, and then, so from 600, it's a very big delta between the next pool size, which is like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 square feet of pool. And so those are the ones that we were really trying to capture, is largely we know that they're not being utilized every day. It's expensive to maintain, and just the evaporation rates on those things are incredible, so.
What, anybody else? Todd? Oh, we have Todd and Shelley, and then we'll wrap it.
So you mentioned that the goal was to get, I think you said to 86
Gallons per capita
gallons
per day.
per person
Mhm.
a day, and we're
Yep.
at like 105.
105-ish, yeah.
So is that number outside of your loop? Is that exterior use? Because anything that you use indoors gets captured.
Correct, so it is exterior
So
use,
we're
so that
trying-
is like,
We're trying to get rid of outside landscaping, anywhere where we use water that's not being captured.
correct, so yeah, so that represents like a consumptive use, like I am not getting that number, that gallons back each day, right? Because if we captured what we use indoors to, actually our GPCD is much higher, but it's not a footprint on our water resource, so we don't measure it that way. And I wanna kind of clarify, we are not trying to get rid of landscape. We are trying to get rid of grass that is not used. So like trees, highly recommend. We love trees, we love bushes, and that's why our Water Smart Landscapes program requires those things. You cannot get a rebate if you just take out your grass and put in rock, right? We wanna see bushes and habitats for animals and trees to provide shade to cool the ground. Like those kinds of things are really important for this community, for quality of life, all those good things. So we do not want hot rock everywhere.
So then Shelley.
Real quick,
next
so
one.
I have septic and I want to get on that list, and then, I didn't know this, but if you're on septic and you have grass, they will actually give you rebates, just like anybody that's a
Yes.
regular,
Well, you pay a
municipal-
water bill, right?
I do not, I'm on a well too.
Oh, yes, so that money is coming from a separate funding program for a groundwater management program, but yes, we will.
Right, so just letting everybody know, like, if you're on a well and you have grass and you wanna convert it, you're getting a rebate for that too, so you just work with them.
Yeah.